laws. I need to inform the audience and the members of the Advisory and Finance Committee that a spectator has elected to record this evening's session, and so this evening's session is being recorded on videotape. Patrick? Thank you. Our first order of business this evening is the minutes of December 8th, 2011. These were sent to you electronically. I'll allow you a few moments to review them, and then the chair will entertain any motion. Are there any motions on the minutes of December 8, 2011? There is a motion by Mr. Reynolds to approve the minutes of December 8. There's a second. Second. Another second. Thank you very much. There are 2 seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion on the motion, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by voting aye. Aye. All opposed. Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I believe to be our final meeting before the special town meeting scheduled for January 23rd. So we have an ambitious agenda, but one that I think is doable, and would have lined up the respective departments and interested parties in those items that we need to review this evening, and then decide what our deliberative process will be with those particular articles on the warrant. So our first item this evening is Article 12, the sex offender bylaw, and with us tonight is Attorney Albert Frank and School Committee meeting member Chris Guerrero for their presentation. Gentlemen, we're more than welcome to come up front. Good evening and thanks for being here. Good evening. This is your opportunity to present to Advisory and Finance this warrant article on the special town meeting warrant. So I ask you to start your presentation, and we'll ask questions as we go along.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I'm proposing here is a sex offender bylaw. You may be familiar with this type of bylaw. Some of us around the community have adopted it. We established a committee last April. Superintendent of schools, Alexander Steve Antonelli, Christine Sand, Bob Montero, Eric Graham, along with Jim Kern, and I think that's everybody else. And she's Ruta. I want to be ahead. And we looked over Somerset's bylaw, sex offender bylaw, and we established that that there were some things that we wanted it, some things we didn't want it. The purpose of the bylaw is to protect the children in Swansea, students in Swansea. We try to keep it, we try to maintain it to be just the private, not the private entities, but the public facilities and the Swansea public schools. Somerset does not have that. Somerset has, they've extended it to nursing homes, little schools, what have you. What this establishes is a 500 feet buffer zone around all the schools, all the recreational facilities in Swansea that are owned by the town. Baseball fields, basketball fields, obviously the Swansea Public Schools. And it also says that sex offenders zoning 2 and 3 cannot live within 500 feet of those protected areas. Now the penalties, if somebody were to live within 500 feet of a school or recreational area in Swansea, first offense, it's just a written warning. Second offense, $3 fine. If someone was to loiter in any of these buffer zones, loiter is defined in this bylaw as staying in one place more than 15 minutes. They would, the first offense, get a $150 fine. Second offense, they would have a $300 fine. Now, like I said, we did not include everything that Somerset had. We did include some exemptions that the Attorney General made when they reviewed Somerset's bylaw. Those exemptions was that the library should not be included. And when I presented this bylaw to the Board of Selectmen, they wanted the library to be included. I can understand that. They had a situation in Bedford where something took place, and I can understand why you make the argument for the library. I personally would like to have it in there, but I can understand the Attorney General's recommendation as to why not to have it in there, and that is because it's a constitutional issue. We have to allow sex offenders to the library. We have to allow them to be able to use the library. Also, now that Joseph Bates High School is being used for all of the town's voting, we had to exclude that during voting time. So they can go there and they can vote. Now, I understand this is not, this is not a solution to a lot of problems. This is more of a tool in the toolbox of law enforcement. This is going to allow police officers to do something about it if they see the individual in areas they shouldn't be. There was a couple questions with the selectmen. They asked me how many level 2 and level 3 sex offenders there are in Swansea. There's currently 19 level 2 sex offenders and 2 level 3 sex offenders. And none of those sex offenders actually live in these buffer zones at this point in time. But if they did, they would be grandfathered in.
So ex post facto, they would not be eligible.
I don't know if people like that.
No, I appreciate what Chris has presented. I'm in full agreement. When he had emailed me, I was very happy to see that he was taking an initiative to run with this ball. As he has stated, Somerset has a similar, and I think you'd agree, Chris, a little more restrictive bylaw. And the city of, at the time, Mr. Frank, I think you were counsel for the city of Fall River. I had conferred with you regarding this sometime, and I'm not sure what the status is of their city ordinance at the time, but they have something similar also.
Everything will be moving towards this. And I think one of the benefits that we had of having Somerset go first was that we were able to get all of the comments from the Attorney General as to what they felt were possible constitutional rights if certain sections remained. So we took the Somerset bylaw and we incorporated all of the Attorney General's suggestions. The concern with the library is that I think we only have one library. I don't think we have a service where somebody can order books. But Somerset, I think, does. They have some type of facility where sex offenders could conceivably put it in order for materials from the library and maybe be delivered to them. We don't have that, so at this point, rather than have this issue come up to the Attorney General when they get the bylaw, we let the library out. And I think as we go forward, it's a good looking document that we start as things change, as what decisions change, we can always take this living document and change it. Amend it and make it stronger. We're going to have something in place that we can achieve something to work with.
Do you have any other additional comments, Chris, at this time, or are you ready to accept questions from the members if they have any?
I'm ready to accept questions. Just one final comment. We talked about including the Wood School and Meadow Ridge, those types of facilities. We decided not to include those facilities just because of the constitutional issues and everything else that brings with enforcing it. The more stipulations that you put on something like this, the more difficult it is to enforce. So we want to make sure that we protect the students and the children as long as best we can with the resources that we have.
Thank you. I'll open over for questions from members of the board. Anyone from this side of the board? To my left? Any questions, concerns? Nothing? The only question I would ask is enforceability, Chief. Are you concerned at all about enforceability?
Not at all, sir. And as Chris stated, when he had contacted me, prior to that, I did have some conversations with our town council, and I was very glad to see this gentleman bring this forward. So I am strongly in agreement with this bylaw, sir.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Carrero for taking the initiative to do this. It seems like you put a lot of work into this, and job well done. And we do appreciate you stepping up to do that.
Thank you, Chris. That concludes our, we will, what we'll do is take this up in a few moments in a deliberative fashion in terms of process. If there's anyone who wants to make a motion this evening to approve, recommend the voters to approve this article on the warrant, Article 12, now would be the time to do so.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve Article 12.
There is a motion to recommend to the voters of Swansea to approve Article 12 at the special town meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by voting aye.
Aye.
All opposed, chair votes aye. The vote is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your help. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda this evening is the licensing of dealers bylaw. Chief Aruda and Attorney Frank from the Wisconsin Center.
Mr. Chairman,
Good evening.
how are you, sir?
How are you, sir?
Good. The last time I was before you people was sometime November 17th regarding this matter. We made some slight revision with the assistance of the town council. I don't know if you want me to fully go over this again. That's what you would request.
I would request that you go over the changes, and very candidly, Chief, for those who weren't here at that meeting, I think it'd be appropriate for you to review it in full.
Originally, we presented basically an amended city ordinance that we had gotten from the city of Fall River. And in it, we had pawn shops, which was an error on my part. There was no intent for me to bring pawn shops, PHWN, into the town of Swansea. My intent was to give the police department the ability to manage manage a lot of these businesses that are taking in secondhand precious metals. So subsequently, after speaking to Mr. Frank, we removed anything to do with managing pawn shops. What we're here today is respectfully requesting that you support a town bylaw that will give the police the ability to make sure that the businesses of Swansea are doing or conducting good business practice, from my opinion. We've had a number of issues, various businesses in town that are purchasing precious jewelry, metals, that are subsequently being stolen from loved ones, family members, friends, and regarding breaking and entering into the home. We have great concerns because it appears our surrounding communities, the city of Fall River, the town of Westport, already have ordinance and bylaws managing the purchase of junk metal, old metal, precious metals, coins, and collectibles, and electronic devices. So what's happening, Mr. Chairman, is they're coming to Swansea and they're selling these items to various businesses in Swansea, and there is no checks and balances regarding these items. So that's why I presented this bylaw to give the police department the ability to do our job effectively, efficiently, and I think every one of you people out there reading the daily papers, they're stealing copper, gold, coins, jewelry. I believe approximately 3 weeks ago, we had a church in Fall River. They stole a 100-year-old relic that was made of silver and gold. They stole down post. Down post. I mean, anything, I was going to say that's not tied down, but that's not truthful, is being stolen, and it's a very serious issue. I've had businesses, kiosks in the Swansea Mall. People are coming in from New Jersey to open a kiosk in the Swansea Mall. You know, it states, cash in a rush. And by the time, with all due respect, that we catch on, that cash in a rush is closed and they're gone. And as I have stated to the board in the past, we have Manouche Jewels in the Swansea Mall. That is, we approach them, advising them what our intent, would they have any problems. They're accepting in open arms because they practiced it already. It's good practice. We've had other jewelry stores that have not been fully factual with investigators, have not been offering up information to assist us in solving crimes. And then subsequently, when we had evidence, and then they cooperated. Being told this morning that that dissipated 3 weeks ago. We're not getting the cooperation that we need. So that's why I'm here. As I stated, this is being done in Westport. This is being done in the city of Fall River.
Fall River actually is in the process of amending it to make it tighter.
Oh, really? Okay. So this is not, I'm not reinventing the wheel. This is practice in other communities. And I'm asking you people for support so that we can do our job. And also that these businesses practice good business.
Attorney Frank, do you have any comments regarding this file?
Again, the more tools that we can give the chief that really don't cost the town any money, I think is effort well spent. It is a problem. My talking with some of the surrounding town councils, they've all decided to do the exact same thing. It's a licensure agreement that will be given by the Board of Selectmen. Therefore, we have control over these people. They will have to cooperate with the record keeping, because the ultimate sanction could be that they get their license pulled. That's always the ace in the hole. So I think Chief is going to find that he has more and cooperative merchants that if they run the business in the town, they got to do it the right way.
Thank you. Chief, Attorney Frank, I'll now open the floor to questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, sir.
I do. I read through this, and I'm certainly in agreement with what you're trying to do. But this is one of those things where I'm a little concerned about the lack of definition of the terms. For instance, a second-hand dealer in electronic devices and media, if a person was a collector of records and CDs, and they were buying and selling them on eBay from their house, would they be a dealer of second-hand electronic media?
I can tell you at this time, sir, I don't know, but that problem hasn't crossed our path. What we're having is,
I understand what you're having, but it's one of those things where if you define it, you could avoid a convenient way of someone having a problem who doesn't need to have a problem. I mean, there are electronic devices. I buy and sell stock tickets. They're electronic devices. Technically, I'm breaking the law.
so with all due respect, if you were my headache for the day, sir, I'd enjoy my job.
Yeah, I know, Chief. You understand where I'm going with that. I hope. Because I totally understand.
I'd like to say yes, but no.
I totally understand the rings. I've had things stolen from me in break-ins. I've been down all those roads, but I also am very concerned about broad, sweeping regulation of any sort. Even though it's only a $100 fine, if you had 500 CDs it would be 500 offenses at $100. I mean, there's just a lot of questions that I'd love to just see those few questions addressed, and then I think it's a great thing, and we should certainly put it in place.
I think the chief would agree that police investigative practices will drag where they can run in, sell the stuff, and get out of town.
We're getting them where we're having people, who I would characterize by the description of using drugs, running into stores, jewelry hanging out of their pocket,
I understand.
trying to sell the stuff.
Absolutely.
And electronic devices, sir, we're looking for, the stolen Wii type equipment, computers, those are the items we're looking for.
Perfect place to define them.
Any additional questions?
No, that's all.
Any questions from my right side of my right side? Yeah? Mr. Reynolds?
Chief, how does that work with businesses that are already in place? Does it happen as soon as the bylaw is passed, they have to come in and license themselves?
What we'll do is, we're gonna make a concerted effort to notify all the businesses that we believe fall within this. I'm gonna set up a meeting, we're gonna educate them on how to electronically provide the department the information, get everybody on board. That's what our plans are.
Any other questions, Mr. Reynolds? Questions to the left side of the body? Anyone on my left? Chief or Osmond, if you could, under section K, penalties, there's a description that I need to know what the definition of the word is. It reads, a shopkeeper or other person in charge of such premises who refuses to admit thereto an officer authorized to enter the same. What authorizes the officer to enter the same?
That would be the chief, the person who's authorized, once he sends a designee to look at the store and check their books. That would be the officer.
So, if the chief designated a patrol officer to do this, if you designated a lieutenant,
Yes.
to do this, or you could designate yourself.
Yes.
Okay. I guess the question I have is, when I read this, it appears to me that it means on demand, with no warrant, with no due process.
Depends the license.
I understand, I'm asking the question, that you can just demand this.
You can, and it's done with secondhand use audio license.
Okay.
It's done with some other type of license. It's done, our health inspector or our building inspector can go into any property and say, I believe there's some violations, I want to see them. The administrative warrant isn't necessary unless the person says you're not coming in. So because this is a licensure, the chief has the ability to go look at the records, and he's specifically mentioned in paragraph I, records shall at all times be open to the inspection of the chief of police or his or her designee and to members of the Swansea Police Department. So if there is, same with liquor establishment, you can go in.
I'm trying to understand and navigate my way through the approval of something that I think is a valuable tool, while at the same time protecting the rights of the citizens.
Listen to me, I agree with you. I'm not here, as I stated, I'm not here to infringe or inhibit citizens of Swansea, right? All I'm asking for is to give the police department some tools to manage what's going on out there in reality, day in and day out.
Does anyone else have any other questions? No questions? Arthur, Chief, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
This item is certainly available to the members for their recommendation at this time. The chair would entertain any motion.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
You're, again, just for the record, I understand what your intent is, but it would be better for the record that you state that you're seeking to recommend approval to the voters at town meeting, et cetera, et cetera. So if you would, please.
I recommend seeking approval for Article 13.
We're recommending to the voters approval of Article 13, correct? discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion on the motion, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by voting aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you for your patience and cooperation.
The next item, Jim, it was Chief Burke available to be here.
He had a couple other meetings he needed to be principal part of, so okay, before it doesn't take for me to probably have as much to do with Arthur.
This body has already voted to recommend to the voters approval of this article. But as the language to the act was not available at that time, I elected to place this on the agenda so that the members of this body would have an opportunity to review that language. As you know, we had several iterations of this language going back and forth electronically between several parties, including myself, over the last week and a half. So if you would please just briefly review the language in Section 1 and Section 2 of this Act.
And Mr. Chairman, I think I know what the specific question had to do with how this would be enacted. I went back and looked at my original draft, and my original draft before the chief referred with his consultant on the case. My original draft for the act was notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, the town of Swansea be able to establish a tax abatement program, and so on and so forth. When that was sent to the consultant, what he had then sent back was, for some reason, he had inserted the words Board of Selectmen, and no one really argued about it. There were no comments from either the DOR or the Senate Council on that. And I think the chair caught it. And really, the way I had always envisioned it, and the way I've always been working on this, was the town of Swansea would establish a program through passage of a bylaw. And that's the correction that's been made. And as a matter of fact, at the time we were working on the petition, I already started working on the bylaw. And that's already well underway. So hopefully this does get favorable recommendation at the town meeting. But the plan I always saw, and what I had always been working on was the draft A bylaw to at some point be present to the town. Once the general court said yes, you can set up a program. You obviously want to set it up to a bylaw, that's fine. We don't have any problems with what you're trying to do.
That was always the intent. What the deed is, as I think we discussed a number of times here, where we identified the specifics of the program. There is a possibility that the general court will reinsert selectmen subordinate to town of Swansea, so as to identify what entity within town would be responsible for setting up such a program. But that's their business. We want, after discussing it with Steve, we want to make sure that that is the town's approval, and the legislature will vet this, meaning town legislature will vet the program once the state legislature gives us the green light to do so. If there's anybody here that wasn't here before, this is the first one in the common site, so that's why it requires a special petition, a home petition, and special petition.
The surrounding states that we looked at do it by way of a bylaw, and I think that's the safest way to get more control, and that's the way I always envisioned it.
Thank you for that clarification. Was there anything changed in Section 2? I'm not aware of anything, but
Don't believe so.
so the process still, for those who are unclear, is that this would be a recommendation from the Advisory and Finance Board to the voters at town meeting. The voters would then take their deliberative process at that point. If they made the recommendation at town meeting, then legislation would be entered into in the general court. The general court would then, being the legislature, would then do its due process. And then at that point, if it were to pass, and signed into law by the governor, then at that point Swansea could then start promulgating its rules, regulations, etc., as it pertains to the program itself relative to the abatement. Is that basically the process?
Correct.
Question? Ken?
Mr. Trent, just a question on, I know it was brought up before on how this works for federal taxes. We're just asking the state here, correct?
Anything else is how it works.
Yeah. So we would still,
We had to pay-
town would be responsible for federal taxes on whatever the abatement was for the five.
That's correct. It's a payroll taxes. It's the same problem we have with the elderly.
Or same thing for that too?
Yeah, it's the same problem.
And peanuts, it's a very small amount, it's at 0.4145% of the total amount. So it's a pain in this, and it's not a big pain in this case. But for the senior work-off, you have to come in and basically set yourself up as an employee so that you're going to pay payroll taxes. And whatever the tax ramifications for you are. The state went back and fixed it, and that's why in our discussions with the Senate, they want to make it clear that you're not off the hook for the federal obligation.
And the DOR echoes the same comment. They said they look at this and they said, they'll find you're in compliance with Massachusetts taxation statutes, but don't forget what you're going to do with the federal. And we've already done it.
And that's mostly because I would expect us to start whining when we pass it.
Mr. Markey, could you come to dispatch, please?
And they want to be on the record, look, this isn't going to go away. You're going to pay that. And the individual certain amount of time.
So once the program is in, we'll need to make sure to budget accordingly for that minuscule
That little amount, which we have in the senior work-off taken it out of the overlay for
Sure. Other questions for members of A&F to my right? Chris? No? Anyone? To my left? Robbie out.
Would this be going out the same time as the other exemptions, meaning for the third quarter tax bill?
I would expect so.
And how would it work for motor vehicles?
I haven't gotten that all worked out, but it'd probably go in the first, that main commitment.
So that would just
The
come
big
out
one.
of
Goes in
motor vehicle
January.
receipts, that wouldn't come out of the overlay.
Don't know if you can pay it out of receipts, so we'd have to work that out.
Well, any exemption just gets subtracted.
Reduced from that,
total.
correct.
So,
I was talking about that next piece where you actually have to come up with some money from the community.
actually, I'm surprised you're able to pay that out of the overlay.
I was too, but they were okay with it. I was going to do a whole other thing, setting up a whole other fund, which I've done in the past,
Yeah.
but they were okay with it.
They need to be on.
And, the local assessment.
Okay. Any other questions?
Pretty small amount.
Yeah.
$1,500.
Was it 1,500?
It's way about.
Other questions?
Was it broadened in terms of the language for the motor vehicle and trailer excise tax? Was that always in there?
No, that was always in there. We're trying to benefit the individuals who don't own a house. Some of them are young, some of them aren't.
It says or, so it wouldn't be on the vote. It says property tax obligation or the motor vehicle and trailer.
The best we've got, as opposed to giving it to your landlord. That's not really what we're looking for.
Other questions from members of the advisory finance board? The only questions I would have would be addressed to the chief, and I've made this clear to him in several presentations, but again, I think it's important that this is the first step in the process. It is the design of this plan and the intent of this plan to retain talented personnel and to provide them an incentive for staying within the Swansea Fire Department. Intuitively, it sounds like the right thing to do, but the plan design is where everything will be critical in terms of the matrices that are developed to make sure that the investment that the people of Swansea are going to make in this program is protected and that it works. And a bylaw is the way to do this. Unfortunately, that if we find that the plan doesn't work for whatever reason or needs modification, you can modify a plan, but at the same time, rescinding a bylaw becomes a challenge if we ever had to do that. I'm not opposed to this bylaw, but I do need to make it clear that to empirically to support a plan, we're going to need to see a plan that really reinforces the intent, the chief's intent, which is to retain personnel or to attract new personnel to the volunteer fire department. I think everyone supports that, but the plan is where the rubber really will hit the road with this.
And all of that is accurate. Retention and also some incentive to attend, those who are. Correct.
Any other, Mr. Salzolo.
So if I understand this correctly, folks, that we're the first town in the Commonwealth that seeks to do this. Apparently, we can't retain people or incentivize them to fight the fire. Is that what I'm getting? We're the first in our block to be doing this?
Well,
the town in the Commonwealth is doing it right now?
I think I would say it differently. I think most others go a different route when they transition from a community that is fully volunteer, as we are. What they normally do is go to a call, what they call a call system, where you get paid per call. And most communities that are our size or smaller, our size is bigger, have either gone full pay or they go call, or they do a combination, which is referred to as hybrid. Those, first of all, are way more expensive, and in my experience, once you go to a call, it's an inevitable move to pay, because I think if you think it through, that will probably become obvious. Particularly a hybrid, it's not only a slippery slope, it's an inevitable slope. So, what I would say is, that's the path most people go, and most of them did it decades ago. They go from volunteer to call to pay. We're trying to do one step in between and say, let's try to do, as they do in a number of other areas in the country, let's incentivize people, keep them volunteer. And I think in a way that will potentially cost a good deal less. There are a lot of people, a lot of fire departments who've done, I don't do research, but when the chief comes in and talks to me, people put such and such volunteer fire department in their budget for $2 million. So people are being paid to be active, but they're still called volunteers because they're not paid in a class account. So I think the chief covered it when he was here. Volunteerism is different than it was 30 years ago. And we're trying to hold off the inevitable, which I think you're going to have in this town. Some number of years down the road, you're going to go. I would recommend skipping the call stage myself, and then you're going to go to pay. And it's going to cost the people who live here a good amount of money. We're trying to stave that off as long as we can. That's the way I would say.
Follow up on that, Mr. Salzolo?
Jim, in your professional opinion, do you feel this is the beginning of a slippery slope?
I think it's a potential to hold that off. I think once you start that, you start it. I think this is a little bit of a left-hand turn in that road.
Other questions from members of the board? Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Jim. Again, at this point, this is an article that this board has already recommended to the voters, but I felt that it was necessary to put it on the agenda tonight to make sure that you saw these language changes. Is there anyone, if it were to be reconsidered at this point, it would have to be from a member of the affirming vote, which as there were 10 folks who voted to approve and one member recusing themselves and one member abstaining, I could easily identify the individuals who would be authorized to vote to reconsider. Is there anyone who's compelled to make that motion? Thank you very much. Then we'll consider the article passed and on its way. Next item on the agenda is the reserve fund transfer, fire department grant, Article 16. Again, I was anticipating Chief Burke. I can hold off on this because I noticed that I've got, I certainly could discuss the Conservation Commission.
He's not going to make it.
He's not going to make it.
You can do this in May. As far as he's concerned, given the new development that you might want to cover, or we can cover at the end of the meeting.
Why don't we cover that at the end of the meeting? I can see that I've got a room full of guests, which for advisory finance is quite rare.
So
And I noticed that my members, including the chair, are being our usual entertaining selves at these meetings, because I know, as I've been told, we're worth the price of admission, according to certain town administrators. So what I would do is, I cannot consider the Conservation Commission land acquisition to a vote. I can certainly hear you now. So if you'd like to be heard at this time, I'm more than willing to do so. And I assume that you want to be heard, Bob.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm actually here to answer any questions that you may have. I don't want to overstep the Preservation Committee. I've been assisting them in this acquisition because there's been somewhat of a difficult negotiation. It's been difficult to this point, and I understand that there have been some questions. Now, if you please, if you want to address the board.
I'm more than happy to hear from the Conservation Committee.
If anybody has any questions specific about the acquisition and how it came about, you have to
As I say, I can't vote on this now, but if you folks are together, it's scheduled for 7:40 vote. So I would ask that you, if you have any questions pertaining to this, you could do so now, because I really would like to, in deference to your schedules, allow you the opportunity not to hear the really painful part of this meeting. So is there anyone who'd like to speak to this subject? Colleen? Good evening. Well, that's because we hide.
I see that. Seems to be at the high school, so.
Me and 15 guys, we just go around and hide.
Okay, just because it's nice small room now, that you can all fit in, and I have to go in and out and everything else.
That was my ultimate motive in design, having this room
You
designed.
wanted the room for your board, right? Going back probably to the early 2000s, the towns have done a master plan and an open space plan, in which we have to identify parcels of land that we would like to acquire for open space or deal with it for open space, as well as how we want the town to look like in the future. Questionnaire had gone out to the public back in the 99, 2000, 2001. And basically, open space was a very big priority to the public. They wanted the town to not look like Yukon or Somerset, but to remain to have open land within the town that it did at that point. So as part of the master plan and as part of the open space plan, certain parcels were identified as being prime parcels, that if we were going to acquire them, they had characteristics that we would want to acquire. A large amount of space is one thing, access to a river or some sort of corridor for animals to move back and forth, habitat for animals or endangered species, or just sort of a landscape that is a rolling landscape as opposed to just looking like anything in the front of the Baker, another Baker farm, was one of these prime pieces that were identified at that time. And it's something that with always, my board, me, have always thought that this would be a fine example for the town to be able to acquire. And it's always been under a threat of being developed. However, I think that one thing that we never realized was Mr. Baker bought that farm back in the 60s to make sure that it wasn't going to be trashed for Route 195. They were going to basically do what they did to the Kmart, Walmart, the Kmart target area for Bill, and what they did to the farm by using fill from that property. So he had acquired it from Mr. Raymond Woods, because Mr. Woods needed to sell the property. He let Mr. Woods stay there on the property, but it was not to be used for any purposes other than for farming. He did that in the 60s, and he's kept it since that time. And when I've spoken to him, his relatives have spoken to him, his intent is that this piece of land, which he loves, would be something that the town should treasure, which it should treasure, it does treasure, and should maintain. It's been a farm since the 1830s. It's in the center of the town. It's far enough off of our commercial area where you suddenly change from going very commercial to a rural characteristic, has rolling hillside, that has streams that go through it, and it is currently being farmed by two farms that are in town. So one of the farmers had approached him about possibility of conserving it as he was getting older, and they wanted to see whether or not that would be his intent, and indeed it was. And so then over the course of probably about a year and a half, 2 years, we've been working with Mr. Maker, and basically I started working with him and the state, and then Bob had sort of taken over when I didn't know how to do that, to work with him to acquire possibility of acquiring that. During the period between 2000 and 2006-07, before the crash, basically the market crash, the town farmed to a half farm just in those years. There are developments that are still pending, they're still good, they're still committed, and we are starting to see nibbles of people that are thinking that it would be good to develop it. Those who can't do anything about it, they're already developed. What we need to do is, as they have to do, is kind of part of the land in our state, and this is one of them. This is a gorgeous piece of land for the town of Swansea. It's one of the highest places in the town of Swansea. And it's only going to be good for the people of the town to acquire it. We all know that if there was this baby, 80+ acres is what we're going to be dealing with. And if that was just development, we'd be looking at 40 to 50 houses going in there. And you'd see a big boost to the school system eventually. So this is going to be once we buy it, and we buy it with this community preservation land. In 2008, the town passed the Community Preservation Act. And the purpose that I think was in the forefront of everybody's mind was they wanted to put aside money to purchase this open space. We have had matching funds at least 25%, so a little more over the last 3 years.
Has the legislature lived up to their commitments in that regard?
The 25%, yes, we get that at least.
Because that process, as you know, as the budgets have gotten tighter in Boston, there's been a...
But that money comes separately. That's a separate fund from any of the general legislative
But the
budget.
distributions to the community did withdraw. They did move down.
Oh, they did, clearly.
Yeah.
Now it's 25%.
Yeah, 25%. But you know something? If we put the money in the bank, there's no way we're getting 25% for our money.
I appreciate that. I'm making the point.
Yeah, it is
that the
all down.
legislature give it with one hand and take it with the other.
I don't know if they're taking as much as it was approved, those that were smart enough to do it in the beginning.
When they had the money. When they had the money.
No, it's actually a surcharge and transaction with the registry of deeds.
Yes, and Bob has the number going down or up.
Yes, it was dollar for dollar, now it's going down to 25 cents per dollar.
That's my point.
But Steve, that was always the way it was set up too. It was always set up that it was a pot of money that was raised. The money that comes in is simply from the surcharge of the registry of deeds. And it's depending on how many towns are in it. So the formula, the amount has gone down, but the formula has always been consistent.
I understand. Thank you. I'm sorry, Colleen. Okay.
So basically, the town, when in 2008, we were given the ability to now put aside the money for purchasing open space and have gone to that, gotten together and found a landowner who is willing to sell this house. And that's the reason why we're here today. I think that this is an important piece of land. We're selling it for less, we're buying it for less than the trade value. And we're buying it because from somebody who wants to keep this open space, wants to continue to be farmed. And as farmland, it will continue to provide services to the town. So I don't know what more you guys need from me on this.
Okay. Well, I'd like to have the body have the opportunity to ask
Sure.
questions.
No.
So I will open the floor to my right. Is there any members to the right who have questions? Chris Hall.
Borrowing the 900,000 on the other end coming in from, for each house and then from what we're getting from the state, is that gonna cover the mortgage?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Are we over?
yes, we'll have service.
Over.
And the reason that we do not want to just take what we have and throw it at it and say, okay, and then do a mortgage on yours, is that you're all aware that the NRV lands just limit their power. There are other lands for people who are interested in doing this as well. So we don't want to just empty our bank account on this one and then have to like start all over again or not have that.
Okay.
So, but we will be definitely able to pay the principal of the loan
Okay.
with the open space money,
Just
more than enough.
Now, do
And
we only get to take a certain percentage because some of it has to be for open space, some of it has to be for
10%
historic?
has to go for open space, 10% has to go for housing, and 10% has to go for historical or what have it, which ends up for those being around $30,000 a piece. So now you've got $30,000 that's set aside for the open space.
Okay, so.
Then you have the 70% of that money that's left in the whole pot, which can go to any one of those. So if that money is basically sitting there, it can be used for the open space.
I just want to make sure that we're not going to take away funds from if we needed to do something for it, whether we could get historic records or historic building or.
No,
Okay.
no, that won't touch any of
And then
those
the second
monies
thing,
and,
if we continue to let people farm on that,
yep,
where does that income go?
back to the CPA.
Okay.
Chris, all set? Other questions from members to my right? Jason?
Yeah.
Do you have a breakdown of what payments are gonna be on that compared to the income?
I would say that probably we're not going to get from the payments from the farmers, we're not going to.
No, I mean, the numbers you said of what we have and what we're gonna be putting toward it and what the rates are gonna be.
Oh, that I don't have,
Whole breakdown of payments.
that I don't have.
Well, let me offer something to that, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Because I have a spreadsheet that was prepared by the accountant's office. There's some differences that exist because of contributions on tax payments, but the program picks up about $330,000 to $350,000 per year with contributions. Now, according to the apportionment that Ms. Brown just described, let's be clear about that, is 10% of that $350,000 for housing, 10% for historical, 10% for open space. The remaining 70% is available for any one of those three. So there's easily enough money to cover the $100,000 per year. As a matter of fact, the surplus is about a couple $100,000. And the issue that Community Preservation Commission had is because of other projects, this program is getting on the ground, because of other projects that are coming forth, they didn't want to put a larger apportionment to one property, because the NRG parcel, many people may be familiar with what was formerly Montauk property, Montauk,
Yeah.
all over the place. There's a number of them, the Community Preservation Commission is considering them as areas for selectmen, and with the Community Preservation Commission. And also, there's the Baker Farm, the Kennedy Baker Farm. Now, that's on Locust Street. What Kenneth Baker has chosen to do is enter into the state's agricultural preservation restriction program, where you are given $10,000 per acre to buy development rights. You still retain ownership, but the state's going to be looking for a contribution from the town of Swansea, whatever that may be. It's been quoted at about $80,000 to make that happen. As may carry on here, a little history here. What happened is Herbert Baker got ill. He had both Dan Kelly, who's a local farmer, and John Almeida. They proposed that Herb put the parcel into the agricultural preservation restrictions through the state and get $10,000 an acre. That was $850,000 to hand to him. Herb tends to be a guy that's pretty much wrapped up in the older world. He didn't want people telling him what to do. He sent him back. The family was quite concerned about that because the property's going to be lost. Who knows what's going to happen to it? Herb has a drawer full of potential offers. I saw 6 of them. They were $650,000 to $2 million. People offering to put the property to sell it. He wanted to give it to the town, so the Baker family asked me to see if which I did. I went to see him. I've known him for 35 years. And I told him what we had to do. We certainly had to have an appraisal. When he agreed to allowing people on the land and into his house, I went to the Community Preservation Commission. They authorized the $4,500 for the benefit of the appraisal. And we went to Giroux and Company, which is a respectable appraisal company that is kind of looking forward. But they have repeatedly withstood the test of course with their appraisal. Giroux came back with a self-appraisal that is part of the package in the file now. What they said is $709,000 for development rights, $1,250,000 current value. The family, there are 5 relatives with spouses and children. They didn't particularly care for the idea of having the affirmative duty of farming the parcel if in fact they sold the development rights to the town of Swansea. Because if you sell the development rights, you enter into that commitment that that property is going to be used for agricultural purposes. Then we went to outright purchase. And what I struck with Herbert Baker in presence of family members that we make $1 million or you keep 2 acres, we get 83, and the town of Swansea owns it. He sat on that for quite some time. And over time, I don't know if he was influenced by his family, but they identified the benefit, and Herb wanted the property to go to the town of Swansea. He then said, I agreed, on July 20th, he entered into a purchase and sale agreement, which Attorney Frank had prepared. So that got us to this point. The fact of the matter is, the action is consistent with the town of Swansea master plan. I didn't think that when the master plan was prepared that I'd be the first one to be waving it around out here, but it does identify the benefits of open space. And just let me read you one take from this, because this is a cost analysis of open space acquisition. What they are referencing here is the development of a 50-acre parcel. I'm not sure that I agree with their formulations, but this is a professional planner. We paid $70,000 for this book, and they reference the Baker Farm, both the Locust Street Farm and the Wood Street Farm. And what they're talking about is the assessment due to impacts with schools and other social services. And it says here, on a 50-acre parcel, now this one's 85 acres. On a 50-acre parcel with a minimum lot size of 60,000 square feet, 29 homes could be constructed, adding 63 school children. The minimum residential lot size on a really big farm is 30,000 square feet. So, if you extrapolate that, and I did, it takes it out to about 96 homes with 208 children. Now, I didn't make up this in the master plan. That's their formulation. If in fact that's the formulation we wish to reference, then that is an issue that we have to consider in this transaction, because for financial stability going forward, impacts to the school system and other social services, it is extremely beneficial that Town of Swansea take this action. Aside from what Colin has said, during this preparation of this master plan, which I wasn't part of, it was completed by the planning board, 88% of the people polled in 12 separate and distinct town meetings in different neighborhoods wanted to retain Swansea rural character. That's what we got.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Questions to my left? Because I haven't allowed this side of the room to ask any questions. Any questions from members here?
Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Markey, Mr. Baker walked into this.
Yes. He entered into a purchase and sale agreement, which is valid on July 20th. It has a term of 1 year. So it goes to July 20th, 2012, and by that time it passes at the town meeting, we will
Because he does have that quality of, like, again, Kelly leading them up to the very end and then changing his mind. And everything that he said, I know that, he's very, well, he's
interesting.
He is like that, that's right.
I plead guilty to that too.
Because, you know, I compared my negotiations with him to Ricky Holbrook at the Sarajevo Accords.
We want to change his mind at the very last minute after all.
He's very pleased, as long as we call it the Raymond Wood Farm. He's very pleased with the process.
Do you have a map, a layout of the land?
Mr. Kerr, while Mr. Allahan's looking at the layout, do you have some idea of what the bonding is going to cost for on a percentage basis? Any speculation at all?
Says we
Last go around.
approximately 2 acres.
We were under 3.
What, say that again?
We were under 3%.
Some up here and over
And what's the length of the bonding you're seeking?
I think what they're proposing is 10 years.
10 years.
9 years after.
9 years.
9 years?
So how the treasurer does that, she might stay short
For a
for the
period of time.
first year.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, if we have another project, we grab some of the energy grants, might wait, combo that up before she goes along. But
Robbie, you're our representative on that board. I assume that you're in favor, and when we're ready to make a motion on this, you'll make the motion?
I will.
Any other questions from members of the board, Jason?
I still would love to see some of the numbers where what we've been taking in for the last 3 years, what we're gonna be paying out for $900,000.
I can talk about that a little bit.
The numbers that we have in, like,
We have currently in each of the 3 separate accounts, the open space, historical, and housing is 78,760. That's what I had from that. And the unreserved was 350,129.52. Looking at taking 100,000, which would be the 78,762 from open space, and the additional money from unreserved funds to pay for the 100,000 that we were looking at doing. With the 9 years, it would probably be about $105,000 a year. All that. I'm looking higher. I figure 105,000.
no more than that.
Right. We take in, before the money from the state, it was just under 30,000 for each one of them, and the additional 185, so it was like 275,000. We can only borrow up to the actual amount that we take in. We cannot count the matching funds from the state in any of the borrowing. So the most we could borrow up to would be the 200. Well, if we did a project with all 3, the most would be 270,000.
I think the other thing too is that money probably doesn't reflect what is coming in this year, because that doesn't get attributed to it until after the.
I did count the money from the open space, housing, and historical. I did not count that money into the unreserved yet.
So there's
So there's
additional money
still an
coming in.
additional, I want to say 240,000.
In theory, though, there's not a bunch of leeway when you take the 78,000, and then it took 3 years to get to 78,000, 3 years to get to 350. You're breaking that down. Every year you spend 100,000, you're coming close to spending most of what you get in. I mean, yeah, there's gonna be a little bit, but spending most of it.
We're spending a third. We're spending a third of what comes in.
But I'd have to see a little better, because it seems like you're spending a lot more than 30.
How many years does that 300 plus 70 actually represent? 2 or 3?
The 350 is the, well, if we add in this year, it would be almost $600,000.
Yeah, I think that's 2 years.
Okay. That changes.
That's the way I remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've only been at this 2 years.
Makes the man work a little better for you?
A lot better.
Right, because 2008 was approved, so we couldn't.
No money.
start collecting
Yeah,
until
yeah, no, right.
10.
That makes a lot of sense.
And when do we collect our 25 cents on the dollar?
After,
When?
October.
October.
We send in our money.
And we
send in
collect
our-
that based upon what we spent or based upon what we're paying? One person at a time, please. Go ahead, Jim.
What we collect.
What we collect. Thank you.
We have to fill out a form by September 15th each year. Well, actually, the assessors and the accountant does each year, showing what was warranted, what was abated, and then what was collected. And then what's off of that.
And one last question, not to be a sticking one, but I'm just, land acquisition is a tricky game. Have we surveyed this land in terms of any potential hazards?
No,
So we own it.
absolutely.
Forever anything like this.
The only activity that ever took place on that parcel other than farming.
Bob, I'm not, I have no evidence of it, but I'm telling you.
Well, we've got 100 years between Raymond Wood and Herbert Jacob. The only thing that took place on that parcel was there was 400,000 cubic yards of lead that was deposited on what would be the Cold River side at the time of the construction of Phase 2 of the Swansea Mall. No, Phase 2 of the Swansea Mall. Tim Rowell is taking his head, you remember that?
What happens with tax revenue? Obviously, we used to pay taxes, now we own it, so we lose tax revenue.
It's really de minimis because it was a 61A exemption.
He was paying 82 cents on one part of the dock.
During the course of the negotiations, someone made a mistake in sending a tax bill, and the parcel on Wood Street is about 3 parcels broken up. That he always received a tax bill for 52 cents. He got a bill for $1,168, and it almost blew the negotiation. We'll get that correct. So we get a valid purchase and sale agreement signed by all members of the Board of Selectmen. Herbert Baker, it was signed in the presence of a family member. And we have zoning board approval, goes to the planning board on Wednesday night, and Mr. McNally is here, we have conferred with him. Actually, it's a procedural matter at that time where Form A approval breaks out the 2 acres from the larger parcel, and then on the 23rd, we see total approval.
This would require a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
Other questions from members of the board on either side? We found our way to 7:40, ladies and gentlemen. And,
One
question,
quick
Peter
question.
Pelletier.
How much wetlands is on this property?
So there would be riverfront restrictions because it goes right up the Cold River. But it's predominantly upland except for that riverfront. And there's actually some houses there, you may be familiar with Meadowbrook Road, which is a dirt zone that goes along the river. And the breakup property kind of interferes with that.
It's a sort of a stream that comes from the pond that they outline, and that slides down to the Cold River. But the way the hillside is, it goes up and then it goes down. So there's a lot of upland, and then you might have a little bit of a marshy area, and then it goes back up again. So clearly, it could be more.
And Colleen, as conservation agent, you have no concern.
No, I don't. There are other people
Honestly-
that I would agree with you that I would want to do 21 events, if this one has to do anything. They want.
Because we're doing this, that part of this, we're doing on some favor. And that requires just that, favor. Any other questions from members of the board? Mr. Alford, at this time, if you'd like to enter a motion, the chair will entertain it.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 11.
There is a motion by Mr. Alford to recommend to the voters of Swansea approval of Article 11 on the special town meeting warrant. Is there a second? There is a second by Mr. Chairman. Further discussion on the motion? Further discussion on the motion? Hearing no further discussion on the motion, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by voting aye. Aye. All opposed, chair votes aye, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming this evening. Everybody, appreciate it. Our next item on the agenda will go back to our regularly scheduled time frame. I'm not going to go to reserve fund transfer. I'd like to see Mr. Jen, the zoning map of the town of Swansea. Steve, I'm sorry to the delay. It came down to, it came down to 6 people beating me up versus you, so I figured I could tackle you, but not the other
We
6.
appreciate it, thank you.
Sounds about even to me, but I guess you had to make a choice.
Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to explain to members of the committee the new zoning map that will be presented at town meeting. I have a draft of that here, and I will explain to you the changes of the new map versus the old map. I'm going to be switching back and forth a little bit. I hope it's not too confusing. The changes incorporate 4 types of adjustments, if you will. These, the first type were mandated by the changes to the zoning bylaws. In particular, they required redelineation of 2 zones which were rendered obsolete. The first in this sort of rust-colored area was the entertainment and tourism zone, which was created, I understand, about 40 years ago.
6 flags on the flag.
Yes, in anticipation of the possibility of a theme park being developed there. That never occurred, but the zone was never changed. And the second involves the lilac-colored areas. There are 2 or 3 of them. The limited commercial and manufacturing zone, which has also been eliminated. In its place, the zoning revision group and the planning board are recommending some adjustments, mostly to business B into a new zone just called manufacturing. I'll explain them. The redelineation of these 2 zones involves a change to really recognize the reality of what exists there now. The change to the entertainment and tourism zone would change the Route 6 area within 500 feet of the center line to business B. That's pretty much what it is now. There are some residences in there, but most of it along the northern section is business B. The balance would revert to rural residential. Again, most of that is residential property. There are some commercial properties there. The one I can think of quickly off the top of my head is overall cobble. Those would maintain our rights as pre-existing non-conforming uses to develop the property, of course. That was a fairly straightforward matter. The changes to the limited commercial and manufacturing zones involve 3 recommendations. For the areas north of Route 6, that would include the areas on Venus de Milo, what is now Target, and the Swampy Mall, Swampy Crossing areas. Again, in recognition of the reality of the situation, the ZID and the planning board recommended that those be changed to business B. The area in Lilac to the south of Interstate 195 is unlikely to be developed for any particular use. It's primarily wetlands and very difficult to develop. I'm not sure why it was ever designated as limited commercial and manufacturing. The recommendation is to change it to rural residential. It's the area in between those 2, this triangular piece in the Sears Farm area, where the changes are a bit more precise. The area 500 feet south of Route 6 is being recommended as business B. That would include existing businesses such as Wendy's, Sovereign Bank, the liquor store along that stretch. And would also suggest that the former Tilcon site be changed to business B. If you remember, that was planned as a Lowe's Target restaurant development that never took place. The balance of the area, which is mostly the Farm Road area, would be changed to manufacturing in the hope of enticing light industry, office uses, and the like. It is a very difficult parcel to develop. So this is in effect what it would look like. North of Route 6, south of Route 6, the bright red of business B, south of 195, can of rural residential, and in the interior, we got the line of color for manufacturing. That's the first type. The second type involved recommendations that the zoning revisions group and the planning board felt were appropriate, and they primarily address the Route 6 corridor, where in the past there had been gaps in the business deed zoning designation. The planning board recommended that that gap be closed, except for one or two parcels that would remain as rural residential. So this little gap in here by Gould Street would become rural residential. The only parcel that would say, I'm sorry, would become business deed. The only both sides of Route 6. The only parcel that would remain rural residential is that portion of the King's Court subdivision near the Holiday Inn Express and the White Church at Lake Lavin. And a little farther down, the extension offices of Mr. Milo. I'm still working on some of the parcel changes there. It's not going to be entirely the length of Route 6. I think there's some streets over there that should stay as rural residential, 2nd Street, something like that. Yeah. So neither the board nor the zoning revision group wanted to tinker with that. So one of the advantages, I should point out, that the new zoning map is going to be based on the digitized parcel map that we have now. The old one was an old-fashioned paper cut and paste that was put together in the late 90s and did not have the accuracy that the new one will have. The third type of change involved what I will refer to as unintended consequences. There were two particular instances. One involved an unusual situation on Walker Avenue area. You can see here there's a little shading of rural residential along the 3 streets along Walker Avenue. It's Nod, Briarwood, and sorry? Oak Hill. Yes, Oak Hill, the third one escaping with every moment, excuse me. The balance of those streets are all developed residentially. They were allowed under a zoning board of appeals decision some time ago. 2 of those parcels were never developed, however. And the gentleman who owned them came to me and said, what can I do now? The new bylaw does not allow me to develop these residentially. I would have to develop them commercially, and that's completely inappropriate for the zone. So the recommendation from the zoning revision group is to extend the rural residential zone to include all of those parcels. There we go. An adjustment. The second instance involved the former farm finishing plant at the end of Ledge Road. That had lost its rights to be used as manufacturing. Under the original proposal, it would have become business B. After discussing that with the owner of the property, the likelihood of that being developed as a business use and the appropriateness of being developed as a business use at the end of the residential road seemed at odds with what really was intended. So while the board did grapple with that a little bit, finally they did recommend that that particular parcel, only that particular parcel, be redelineated as rural residential. So it would be used for, could be used for residential uses there. It's at the very end of Ledge Road. I don't know if any of you have been down there recently, but the mill itself has been torn down for some time now. And the last type involved corrections. There were 2 properties that came to our attention, actually 3 properties. 2 were discovered by the building inspector on Wilbur Avenue. In 1985, at a town meeting, they were redelineated as business A. They never changed on any map. And they don't show up on this one, so we're going to correct them.
changes recommended by the zoning revisions group and planning board. Changes to correct unintended consequences and changes to correct mistakes that we caught in reviewing the plan. These changes were developed by the zoning revisions group, which includes Mr. Kern, Frank, two members of the zoning board of appeals, Mr. Reed and Mr. Fitzpatrick. The building inspector was also the zoning enforcement officer, Colleen Brown, who's the conservation agent. I chair the group, and we also asked someone unaffiliated with the town, Jim Hall, who's with Mount Hope Engineering, to give us sort of an outsider's point of view. The recommendations were presented to the planning board, presented to the public at 2 public hearings. Some adjustments were made based on the testimony at the first public hearing. The recommendations were approved and passed on to the board of selectmen and were recommended for changes on the map itself. This is a draft. The final product will be developed after the town meeting.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Questions from members of the board? I'll start with the left side of the board. Fernando.
Yes, what has happened in regards to square footage amount from before to the revisions we're doing commercially?
The commercial use has expanded considerably. I don't have a precise figure, but clearly the addition, the change in the entertainment and tourism zone, the extension of business B zone along one or the other or both sides of Route 6 means that there is more commercial zoning in the area where most people feel that it has developed and has a stronger potential for development in the Route 6 corridor. The others are probably, rural residential is probably approximately the same. It picked up a little bit. I don't want to call it a meaningless addition, but I don't think there'd be much residential development in that area south of 195. The balance of the community, you can see, has long been rural residential. It's staying that way. The adjustments were more to the largest area adjustment were to those 2 previous zones that were made obsolete by the zoning law.
I guess what I'm trying to say is just because the way, and maybe it's not the scale, but it looks like that the previous one had a lot more commercial area there.
No, this area here was entertainment and tourism. And the uses there under the old zoning bylaw were much more varied, if you will. And actually, not to complicate matters, the old bylaw allowed what I refer to as bracket creep, U Street. You could do some residential in business A, and you could do some business A in business B, and by the time you got to manufacturing, most people's eyes were crossed. I wasn't really sure just what you could do with the new bylaw, single concept, residential uses for residential zones, commercial uses for commercial zones, a lot clearer for people. So this is gone. This is residential now. This green area, by the way, is the aquifer protection overlay district. It's still, the underlying zone is still residential. And the areas along Route 6 now are clearly delineated for business uses. There are no manufacturing uses allowed within 500 feet. Manufacturing that could be developed in the Sears Farm Road area would be at least 500 feet off of Route 6.
What happens to someone who is in a rural section but wants to have like a little business at their house?
The new bylaw allows professional occupations if they meet certain criteria that is delineated in the bylaw. Non-retail uses, like if you want to have a legal office, something like that. The zoning board has even allowed some internet-based businesses to be there. You simply kind of custom the house by tchotchkes in a bag and walk back out. It has to be one of either minor or major occupation that is delineated in the bylaw. And if it's a major occupation, the zoning board of appeals has the right to impose certain conditions on the hours of operation, additional parking, time.
Other questions to the left side of the board? Pete Pelletier.
What were the changes that were made to Wilbur Avenue area?
There were two parcels there that had been delineated in the 1985 town meeting. They were changed to Business A, two tiny parcels near what I call the Ivy League Street, Harvard Street, and that area. They were just never picked up. The building inspector discovered them and asked if they be included on any change to the map.
Other questions to my left? Pete, you all set? Yep. To the right side. But basic, no questions?
I
All right.
do,
Chris, go right ahead.
The entertainment choice district, when you bring that down, the few remaining businesses that are there, they're gonna be grandfathered in. Are you gonna allow them to transfer that? If they have a business,
If you have an existing business now within 500 feet, you will in fact become conforming. If you are residential and are now non-conforming, you do have right to the pre-existing non-conforming use.
way in the back.
Oh, way in the back.
You know,
Those now become pre-existing non-conforming use, and the common term is grandfather.
Okay.
You can continue to operate as a business, you can continue to develop that as a business, sell it as a business.
Okay.
It would be up to the zoning board, I think, to allow a similar use that's not exactly the same, but that would be something to
The
review.
board kind of has to be able to do that, and I'm wondering, is it going to hinder their value after?
I don't think it will hinder their value. The only caveat is that if for some reason it's purchased, if a commercial use is purchased and becomes a residential use, it loses all of its pre-existing rights. So long as it stays a business, they can continue to operate, it can continue to develop.
The other question I had was the Swan Finishing, do they have access on Garland Road?
No.
They
They did at one time. Colleen and I discussed this. She, of course, knows every possible town.
Stone column.
Yeah, we discovered that looking at a map, and apparently at one time they did, but it does not appear that they have that access anymore.
Colleen, the elected.
They would have to,
Oh, she's here, I'm
actually,
sorry.
the power company owns a lot of that land, and they would have to actually access off of dam, over the dam that's there.
Oh, okay.
In order to get access off of Garden Neck Road. And there's, I don't think there's too many of us that would want to put our car on that street.
More people. Any other questions, Mr. Howard? And basically, Steve, from the chair's perspective, really what you've done is you've brought a map to those changes that the voters have already agreed to at one point in time or another.
The changes that were approved in the bylaw are reflected in the changes to the entertainment and tourism zone and the limited commercial and manufacturing zone. There are some others that were not considered at that time. Those are the corrections.
They were corrections who were previously
Yes.
done at previous time.
Right. The only thing new that's being presented and is consistent with the existing bylaw is the extension of the
Extension of business days.
And as a practical matter, there are some residential uses there that would be affected, but it has gradually changed over the years, I'm told, from primarily residential to primarily business, and I see that moving ahead. As a residential property owner there, in a way, you could consider it a windfall. Your land has suddenly become a lot more valuable. Psychologically, you may not think so. You would always prefer to think of it as your home and keep it as a residence. You may continue to do so, but if you have an interested body who would like to develop it commercially, I'm sure the value of the property is much higher.
So I own two parcels within 500 feet of the center line. I'll treat it.
Well, I'll let me know. Those who can.
Do I have to live with my wife at those addresses in the future? Any other questions for members? Robbie?
I just have one question.
Sure.
Over, next to the Ethan Allen and where Baker Tractor is.
Yes.
Those lots, that form Baker Tractor, are those still, are they gonna be commercial or are they gonna be?
Well, the entrance, I don't know how far back it goes, the bigger parcel tractor, but within 500 feet of Route 6, it will be business B, and I think it's business B now, so it won't change from what it is. We discussed potential development scenarios with Mr. Chadwick, but,
Get a market basket.
On that note,
if I just have a moment, I've always said that if I could do one of two things in town, which is either bring an Olive Garden or a Christmas tree shop in
don't
town.
say that. Now it's on.
There would
my
be
wife
there
will
would be
say that.
3 portraits with candles in front of them in all of the towns in Swansea. There would be John F. Kennedy, Pope John Paul II, and me. Because a Christmas tree shop would anoint me.
I know one person in 545 Old Boulder Road that would be very happy.
Well,
It's not me.
to be honest with Mr. Chairman, you feel it's lost on me, but I know lots of other people who would be deliriously happy about it.
So be it.
So that's it. I look forward to seeing you at the town meeting, so I can explain to the community. I think these simplify and clarify and make consistent with the bylaws. Changes in the necessary.
Thank you. Being no other questions, the chair would entertain a motion on Article 15, zoning map, town of Swansea.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Article 15.
There is a motion from Mr. Reynolds to recommend approval of the voters of Article 15 at the town meeting, special town meeting. Is there a second? Second. There is a second by Mr. Howard. Discussion. Hearing no discussion on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by voting aye. Aye. All opposed. Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Antonelli. I'm sorry for the delay this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
I didn't bring anything for Rena now, I sent in my conversations with you, but if people want to get into it, Steve probably knows more about what's going on down there.
Is there, we are not at that point in the agenda, but is there anyone who's going to have any questions? This is one that traditionally the Advisory Finance Board has deferred on the acceptance of road extensions. But we certainly we have the authority to make a recommendation. Is there anybody who's going to have any questions about Raymond Allard? If we consider it? Anyone? Steve, I think you can go home. Thank you. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is Article 7, the town clerical salaries account. Mr. Curran.
I sent a spreadsheet
You call
to
I just want to follow up with Nancy Durfee on how do what she.
I have a line right here.
I want to talk to you.
Somehow electronically, that must not have
Not too bad.
No, some do, some haven't. Some have.
Good list.
The amount of money that's going to go into the motion is $400. The selectmen didn't vote on an amount to go on a warrant, but the amount of money that's going to go on into the motion is $400 to cover small cap now, and that's reviewing the position that Phil was going for the day after the meeting. He's gone over all that transpired in that office.
Does anyone have any questions regarding Article 7? Now making clear that the article will have a $400 price tag associated with it, or no more than $400 price tag associated with it. And I think we've made our points very clear on the subject of comp time, as it were. Mr. Alford.
I just have a question. I said the 10.5 weeks for clerk
Yes.
from 124, is that, 10.5 weeks from the end of January would only go to till April, right?
Actually, you're talking, I don't know, pay period.
Yeah, this is the same spreadsheet that reads as if instead of as of. Up at the right-hand corner. So I'm going to assume those are pay periods, probably.
Okay. All right. That's why I was just a little confused about that. All right. Thank you.
Other questions regarding Article 7? Mr. Reynolds? Anyone else? Questions regarding Article 7? Mr. Susan?
The only comment I have to make is, I know we beat the horse on the comp thing, and I don't want to go there. I just would like to know, what is where are we going
there now, and we're having that situation with the comp time already. That's adding up.
We're going to have to address that in a larger conversation about the few employees we have in the three town halls that have blue comp time. There are some greater laws that apply, and we're going to have to address it. And as I think I've gone over here, part of the difficulty with that is there are a number of different entities that have some level of authority over those decisions. So that makes that much more complicated. It's one of the things that is horribly time consuming. It would be very different if the form of government was different or, a number of other things. So, and that is, so it's one thing to say this is a new policy, but there's another thing to work through. But that's going to be part of, that will be included in that.
Other questions regarding Article 7? At this time, the chair would entertain a motion regarding Article 7.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Article 7.
There is a motion by Mr. Reynolds to recommend approval to the voters of Article 7. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second from Mr. Alpert. Discussion. Hearing no discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by voting aye.